I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network. What have we been telling you to do with Special Counsel Jack Smith's criminal investigation into Donald Trump's election interference? Follow the money. Follow the money. Look, Special Counsel Jack Smith's background was the leader of the Department of Justice Public Integrity Section. So his specialty before going to The Hague, where he prosecuted war criminals, was following the money. So wire fraud charges and money laundering and criminal campaign finance violations, those were all Special Counsel Jack Smith's specialty. And then, of course, investigating and prosecuting war criminals makes him the perfect person for this job. And so what I've always been saying on the case relating to the January 6th insurrection, where there's a grand jury currently impaneled in Washington, D.C., where Special Counsel Jack Smith is presenting evidence, so I've always said, follow the money, because I think when we ultimately see an indictment brought by Special Counsel Jack Smith, which I suspect will be brought at the end of the summer, possibly in September, maybe late August, I think October, the latest, I think we're going to see a lot of charges for wire fraud, money laundering, campaign finance violations, and a new Washington Post report kind of confirms that logical strand that we've been talking about here on the MeidasTouch Network. Here's what the Washington Post says. In addition to some of the other areas of criminal investigation, Smith's team has looked extensively at ads and email pitches that raised funds off of Trump's false claims of election fraud. People familiar with the matter said. So Trump's team knew there wasn't election fraud. Trump's team commissioned multiple studies that came back and said no election fraud, that Trump paid millions of dollars to. Trump's inner circle said no election fraud, but they would lie to raise money and say there is election fraud, and please give us millions of dollars so that we could fight the election fraud. Or in one instance, they said, give us millions of dollars so that we could use it for our election defense fund. No such thing existed. There wasn't even an election defense fund. The Washington Post article goes on to say, in the weeks after the election, an advertising firm created 3 ominously named spots for Trump's fundraising effort. Overwhelming, Stop the Steal, and On Tape. But when lawyers for the campaign reviewed the advertisements, they raised concerns that these spots contained false information and might not meet network standards. You think? According to people familiar with the matter. The campaign was facing a repeated problem, Trump advisor Jason Miller wrote to Larry Weitzner, an executive at the firm producing campaign ads for Trump. Quote, the campaign's own legal team and data experts cannot verify the bullshit being beamed down from the mothership, he wrote, according to 4 people familiar with the email. That was why Giuliani and his lawyers were 0 for 32 as of that point in the court cases that they filed. Miller added, an apparent reference to the number of times Trump's legal team had challenged election results in court and lost. That number ended up increasing to about 70 times. And so that email that I just read, it was in the Washington Post report from Jason Miller, is one of many pieces of evidence that prosecutors have obtained indicating that Trump advisors privately didn't believe or were at least skeptical of voter fraud claims. Some of those messages came as top campaign officials continued to approve advertisements raising money off of those claims. You see, that's called wire fraud. That's a crime. If you know you're lying to people, we are fighting election fraud. But you know, the mothership. Who's the mothership? The mothership's referring to Donald Trump and Trump's inner circle, and they're beaming down complete BS, and people on their behalf are now aiding and abetting criminal violations, aka conspiracy, aka RICO, aka y'all going to jail, a lot of y'all, and that Jack Smith's got the goods. The article goes on to say Smith's team has sent subpoenas in recent months seeking detailed information about the fundraising ads. The Washington Post viewed one of the subpoenas. Investigators have asked multiple Trump advisors about the formulation of the ads, payment for them, and whether campaign aides knew they were false before they were released. Prosecutors also have subpoenaed information about media buying firms and others involved in the process, people familiar with that effort said. If individuals knowingly used electronic communications, such as emails, to raise funds under false pretense, that could constitute wire fraud. The article goes on to say, however, politicians and interest groups frequently use overheated rhetoric to try to raise money, and it's unclear if prosecutors have reached any conclusions about whether the election fraud claims by the Trump campaign crossed a legal line. Another focus is whether individuals who disagreed with some of the claims were co-opted to participate in fundraising efforts. In one subpoena reviewed by the Washington Post, prosecutors asked for all documents related to the use of Michael R. Pence's name in fundraising, including but not limited to whether his name could or would continue to be used in fundraising, and any individual indicating that they do not want to be or no longer would be a surrogate in the fundraising emails. In other words, it goes beyond overheated rhetoric, that's used in political campaigns. They were using the NIL, name, image, and likeness of people like former Vice President Pence and others, saying, donate money, to stop the steal, all of the things they're going to say. And those people did not want to be in those ads because they knew it was a lie. The article goes on to say, when Trump wanted to release a press statement saying a single report of fraud was the tip of the iceberg, campaign advisors argued internally against using the language because they believed there was no evidence for such a claim. The claim went into the news release anyway, according to people familiar with the matter. Prosecutors have homed in on the phrase and the discussion of whether to use it with multiple witnesses, according to people familiar with the investigation. That's big, folks. You got to follow the money. As I've always said, the way I categorize what's going on with the grand jury in Washington, D.C. right now, I think there are four main areas that Special Counsel Jack Smith is focused on in the criminal investigation. Just so you're not confused, there are two major cases. One, Special Counsel Jack Smith has already indicted Donald Trump on. That's relating to the willful retention of national defense information, the theft of the government records, the classified information, obstruction of justice, conspiracy, making false statements. That's filed in the Southern District of Florida because Mar-a-Lago is based in West Palm Beach County in the Southern District of Florida jurisdiction. That was unfortunately the correct jurisdiction of where that's filed in. That case is proceeding. Okay, still, there is a criminal grand jury impaneled in Washington, D.C., receiving evidence regarding Donald Trump's election interference in connection with the 2020 election. Okay, there are four categories, I think, that are the subject of Special Counsel Jack Smith's criminal investigation. Number one is the January 6th insurrection itself, obstruction of an official proceeding, and potentially even seditious conspiracy. Number two is the money laundering, wire fraud, campaign finance violations, what we're talking about in this video. Number three is the fake elector scheme, whereby fake electors would be affix their names to fraudulent electoral certificates and have those be counted by former Vice President Pence, then Vice President Pence saying that Trump won when Biden won. That's number three. Number four, Donald Trump's threats to state and local election officials, people like Brad Raffensperger, who, by the way, is speaking with Special Counsel Jack Smith and meeting with Jack Smith's team this week. But these are the extortive conduct, extortion, threatening these state and local election officials, also working with some MAGA state election officials to go into state election offices to steal voting data that, of course, didn't belong to Donald Trump, so they can manipulate the data and claim that there was voting fraud that did not exist. So those are the categories of the criminal investigation of Special Counsel Jack Smith. We will, of course, keep you updated on all of those. But again, follow the money. That's going to be a major part of the criminal indictment that I think ultimately will be filed by Special Counsel Jack Smith. Until next time, I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network. Hit subscribe. We're on our way to 1.5 million subscribers thanks to your support. Check us out at patreon.com/MeidasTouch. And wherever you get audio podcasts, make sure you subscribe to the MeidasTouch podcast. Have a great day.
At MeidasTouch, we are unapologetically pro-democracy, and we demand justice and accountability. That's why we're spreading our message to Convict 45. That's right, gear up right now with your Convict 45 tees and pins at store.MeidasTouch.com. That's store.MeidasTouch.com.